Hello, everyone. I think it's Friday. I believe it's Friday, right? I mean, it's Friday. That's why I'm in a good mood. So, hello, everyone. Happy Friday, and welcome to another weekly digest. Today we have three main topics that I think will be interesting. Mostly around acquisitions that news of acquisitions that went out this week. But the three topics that we have today. Oh, my bad, my bad, my bad. Don't kill me. I forgot to introduce my honorable guest. Edessa, how you doing? How you
I
doing?
was I was just looking. I was just looking. Maybe it's the Friday blues. We're
It's
doing great, man. It's the end of the week, middle of close to the end of the month as well. So happy about it.
good, good, good. But yeah, so going back to the topics we have to discuss today, the three main things. First one is has to do with auto checks acquisition spree. Um, the news came out this week about auto check acquiring Autotega, which is a startup based in Egypt. So that's the first one we'll talk about. The next one is around the news, a very interesting news that been circulating over the past week about Mr. Easy's the sale of Mr. Easy's capital from Zagadat Capital for $1 billion. And that was something to really talk about that I think will be interesting. And the last one is just dissecting the Q1 um VC funding in Africa and just trying to see what the numbers are saying and what we think will happen for the rest of the year. So diving right into the first topic, auto checks acquisition spree. So there was an article that came out so pretty much the article came out this week. Multiple articles came out this week, and the CEO of AutoCheck actually confirmed this Itop Igbe. But the news was around AutoCheck's acquisition of Autotega, which is pretty much another automotive technology platform that's based in North Africa. Now, for those who don't know what AutoCheck is, AutoCheck was founded in 2021 by Itop Igbe, and it's an automotive technology company that's kind of pretty much created a platform that connects dealers and those looking to sell cars with buyers in an online environment, right? Now they've added more pieces to that by adding, of course, the fintech part of it, which enables the easy payments and collection of payments. They've also added, and I think this happened over the last year, they also added um a feature that now enables people to get loans on cars. So now you don't have to pay the 100% payment on your car. You can just buy a car with as little as 30% down payment. And of course, the balance, the remaining 70% is paid over a monthly installment, which ranges from about 12 to 24 to 48 months. And of course, interest rates varies based on what's going on. But I think the good thing that they've done is they've been able to partner with 70 banks, and they've been able to shorten the review period to 72 hours. Now, I don't know how to do that. I mean, I don't know how they're able to, and maybe that's something we'll talk about later on, but I don't know how they're able to reduce that review period with Nigerian banks to 72
Mm.
hours. I think that's very interesting. But going back to the acquisition, it is a very strategic move. I think it's a very strategic move, especially when you look at the fact that AutoCheck was founded in 2021, right? And they've been very heavy on acquisitions since they were founded. Now, this acquisition of Autotega is their third over the past year, and the sixth over the past 2 years. So they're a very acquisition-based company. They're rapidly growing. And when you look at how much they've raised in capital in total, they've raised about $16 million altogether in capital. And I think the last round was a seed round, which was about $13.1 million. So I think that plan is to grow quickly and scale quickly. Now there hasn't been that much detail about the numbers as far as profitability or revenue or margins and anything of that sort, right? You know how private companies keep a lot of these things private, but the fact that they've been able to grow quickly, and I think they're not 7 different countries in Africa. They're in Nigeria, Ghana, Uganda, Kenya, Cote d'Ivoire, Senegal, and even Morocco. And of course, with this acquisition, they'll go into Egypt as well. So, and now keep in mind, Egypt is actually the second largest economy based off population and VC funding and all that stuff, right? Um, So this move is actually very strategic because I'm looking at growing into that market and scaling into that market. Now, I've been thinking about it to see. As far as like what do I think on this, and it's hard to really like come to a conclusion because a lot of the numbers are private, and you know how hard it is for you to get numbers on
Yep.
startups and stuff. So I can't really necessarily tell how much this. I mean, what they're acquiring these startups for because it was all undisclosed, right? So I can't really tell, but I think it's a very strategic move. I'm just more concerned about how quickly they're trying to grow and scale. Looking at it from the perspective that they were just founded in 2021 and they already had 6 acquisitions. So I don't know if their plan is to grow scale, show proof of growth and scale and raise more capital and have more acquisitions. I don't know what exactly the tactic is, but especially in the economy that we have today, where capital is really expensive, I would think, you know what, this is the time to probably slow down, cut costs, find means to become more lean, focus on profitability, generating revenue, then maybe over the next year or two, then you can now think of making more acquisitions. But the fact that they're going the route of acquisitions right now in this kind of economy, um, I don't know how I feel about that. But what do you think?
And I like it because I used to be a critic before about how Africa doesn't trade internally. So we don't trade inside each other, like Nigeria to Kenya or Ghana to Uganda, stuff like that. So seeing rapid expansion, but Pan-African expansion, I think that's very strategic. I didn't know that even the continents, as we as a continent, are that interesting as far as the auto industry or auto resale industry. I didn't think it was that interesting. And maybe they're trying to make it more interesting by aggregating the numbers. Because I think you and I saw some data this year about, like, I think it was 14,000 new cars that were purchased in Nigeria last year. That's a very small number, in the scheme of things. So how often do, no, that's used cars, but how often do you, that's new cars. How often do you use cars change hands? Maybe that's more interesting. So their conscious decision to be Pan-African from the jump is impressive. The aggressive and quick expansion is also impressive as well. Obviously, the founder has experience in this industry before, so it's very natural. And I think we'll keep seeing more of that. We'll talk about this more in the course of the conversation, but like something else will be happening in Egypt that we don't know about. Given all these deals we're hearing that Egypt is always being involved in, something is happening there in the grand scheme of things, something macro, I think that we have to probably have a separate podcast just talking about that.
Yeah, I think it's something we need to even have a separate conversation on because it's kind of like if you think about it, like every startup has some kind of strategic goal to expand to that region. Now, to be fair, it is probably positioned properly for those kind of investment because the fact that the government actually has a lot of incentives to aid startups. They also get a lot of investments from the Middle East, right? So they get a lot of investments from the Middle East and the UAE and Dubai and all those kind of places. So the fact that that economy is already, or the Egyptian economy is already set up just to help boost the whole startup ecosystem, and the fact that also positioned in Africa, kind of to say, I mean, kind of has a lot of African tech startups looking at that market as a potential area for growth as well. Also, the fact that they actually have a lot. I mean, I believe population of Egypt is really 100 million plus. So there are a lot of people in Egypt. That's a big market. I mean, you're looking at Nigeria, that's 200 million plus. The only other country that has over 100 million people in Africa, I believe, is Ethiopia, which also has 100 million plus people. So
Mm.
Egypt is properly positioned for startups if they're looking to grow and scale. So I'm not necessarily surprised that a lot of people are moving to that place or looking to grow in that market. But we can have a separate conversation and try to dive more into it. Okay, but that was how we auto check. I mean, like I said, with all of these things, only time will tell if this is a good move or not. But I'm pretty sure once things slow down at some point, they probably want to raise Series A or B and stuff, and at that point we'll start getting more insight into what's really going on. Hopefully, we'll see. But diving to the next topic, over the past week, there's been this news of Zagada Capital, which is Mr. Easy's look at Mr. Easy's VC firm, or
Shout
his
out to the name though. Like I think that's the
yeah.
best investment fund name.
So Guardian, it was actually Guardian that published this report. So Guardian wrote out a report about a couple of days ago, about a week ago, on Zagada Capital selling the firm for $1 billion. In my mind, I was like, who sells a VC firm? I mean, right from the get-go, that didn't even make any sense to me. Like, you don't sell a VC firm.
Yep.
What does that even mean? So, and the funny thing is, so they actually wrote that report on Zagada Capital being sold for $1 billion. And the whole report didn't necessarily make a lot of sense to me. So after digging more into it, I actually realized that what actually happened was a firm, a musical technology firm that Mr. Easy is associated with in somehow, and I'll provide more context on that, was what got sold. And this firm is called Vidya, is what got sold. Now, for those who don't know what Vidya is, to my understanding, Vidya is just a tech platform that allows kind of underserved music artists and creators to create, of course, distribute and sell their music and get better paid for it. Right now, the truth of what happened was Gamma, which is being backed by like $1 billion in venture funding, and was founded by Apple's former global creative director, is what acquired Vidya for an undisclosed fee. So the fee is not even out there as to how much Vidya got acquired for. But and I don't make any speculations. I'm not making any speculations. But from the few things that I got here and there, it was around 250 million. But I'm not speculating.
Unlike some journalists.
Yeah. But so that was figure that that was out there. So even when you look at the numbers now, the fact that Gamma is only being backed by $1 billion. How can they acquire another company for $1 billion? It doesn't make any sense, right? Now, how's Mr. Easy related to Vidya, right? So Vidya has different partners, and I'm looking forward to explain this in a simple manner, right? But Vidya has kind of like existing partnerships with different organizations and bodies, right, as a way to grow and scale that platform, right? It's something that's highly known in the music industry, and obviously I probably know about this as well. So they have different collaborations, right? And one of them being with Empower Africa, as that means to grow into the African market. Through that collaboration with Empower Africa, Mr. Easy is directly involved with Empower Africa, and that's how he's related to Vidya. Although Mr. Easy's capital firm, which is Zagadat Capital, or even Empower Africa to some degree, are not in any way directly involved as investors in Vidya, because I mean, you go on Crunchbase, Empower Africa or Zagadat Capital is not listed as an investor in Vidya. And even through the SEC filing after the sale, after Vidya's SEC filing after the sale, neither of those investment firms are actually listed as on the cap table, right, as investors. So there's no direct correlation, for Zagadat Capital as an investor in Vidya. Mr. Easy has ownership stake in the company through his collaboration with Empower Africa and Vidya. So look at it like the likes of you know what happened during the pandemic, right? When investors really blew up, when they gained some traction during the pandemic, and they gave the artists some equity stake. So like those artists that used to perform for investors actually had some equity stake in the company, and that's how they actually gain some power in the company. Now that's something similar to what's happening in this case, in the sense that, Mr. I did some collaboration with Vidya, and instead of just strictly cash compensation, probably has some equity stake in the company. Now, from what I'm hearing, right, then again, this is not publicly disclosed information, but from what I heard, and it's not only Mr. Easy that was even related. Rick Ross will also has some equity stake in the company through collaboration. French Montana is another person that also has some equity in the company, right? Nvidia. From what I got, these different artists' compensation or their exits came out to like between 200 to like maybe $1 million in exit capital, right? So nothing close to the nothing close to the 250 million, not even talking about $1 billion for Mr. Easy. So that's really what happened, right? With this whole thing. I think what I find most interesting is the fact that this article is even still up on Guardian's page.
Yep.
as the fact that Zagalot Capital was being sold for $1 billion. I'm actually being surprised about. I'm really surprised about that. But digging deeper into this,
It makes you wonder how all this starts. Like how the rumors start. You get like who's probably the first
I don't know.
first wrong example.
It's funny, man. I don't know, because even when this whole thing happened, right? Easy actually tweeted, right? He actually tweeted something along the lines of Empower Africa, as he said, I startup just exit to I go they call and ask for my money or something like that. Maybe it was that whole tweet that kind of triggered this whole charade, right? Or this guy just sold his company, but then again, that's still not enough. I mean, that was an innocent tweet. It didn't necessarily mean much. I put it more on the news outlets who just put stuff out there without doing their research, which is why it's very key to do your research. But even beyond that, it's like, why is that still up on your page? Like, like you should take that stuff down. But even in the whole news is interesting in the sense that I think this poses some kind of opportunity within the music space. And I know this is something you probably know about because you've worked. I mean, I know there's some artists that you've probably seen even before they blew. Well, I mean, during your VC days as well. So it just poses a lot of opportunity within this space, right? Especially with the fact that Afrobeat's not getting a lot of traction. I mean, look at Vida, the fact that they're trying to expand into these markets because they saw the need and they saw the appeal that Afrobeats now has on a global scale, right? So it's more like, what can we as well be doing to enable our artists, especially the underserved ones? I mean, there are a lot of artists that we know who never make it, who are actually quite really good and actually have a lot of talent, right? So what are we doing to really enable and empower these artists to get their music out there to the global audience? I think that's something that the music tech industry should be looking at. It's kind of like, how do we create that platform, right? To do that, because it's not always about labels. And don't get me wrong, I know the musical labels do a lot of good work as far as investing in this artist as well. But we're in 2023, right? That now the internet has done one thing of democratizing a lot of things and just opening a lot of things, right? There are a lot of independent artists who have been able to successfully grow and scale their platform. I mean, Chance the Rapper is a highly known one, but there are also other independent artists who have been able to successfully build a brand around themselves. So I think we should be doing the same thing within the African market, with the fact that Afrobeats is really getting a lot of recognition. I mean, look at how artists are selling out arenas in the US. Burna Boy will come here, will sell out. Wizkid will come here, he will sell out. David will come here, he will sell out, right? There are even also smaller ones who will even come here and even do really well. So it's more like, what are we doing to really empower our own artists and to get them the visibility that they need? So I think that's something that the music tech industry should be looking into as well. But I don't know. What do you think? What do you think about this whole news?
Well, first of all, I think, like you said, it's a good signal. Vidya was showing interest, right, in African music and African content. You get, hopefully Gamma continues that. You get that's also a small concern we're not talking about. Hopefully, Gamma continues that direction that Vidya was taking. That's one. But two, this also makes people aware, that we talk about the creator economy. This was technically a way to help artists monetize and distribute their products.
Mm-hmm.
You get this is what Vidya is, this is what Empower also pushes, on their own. So they show that there's still a lot of work to be done in that sector. But just on a high level, Nollywood, Afrobeats, those two creative sectors have been, and even sports, have been growing very well, led by the youth. Just like tech was growing very fast, led by the youth. It's interesting to see when those two connect, what can happen. Let them start talking. Let's start seeing innovation across the board. I know I talked to some friends who tell me about there are hubs in India where many of this Marvel VFX effects you're seeing is run by, like, some tech savvy shops. You get who is running that in, what's the tech talent looking like in Nollywood, what's the tech talent looking like in Afrobeat. There's so much to unlock, so much value. And I think Ezzy and what's it called, and E of Future Africa, they've been talking a lot. They're talking about how they want to collaborate more and things like that. You get, so we're gonna be seeing some results of what was brewing in the background, right?
Yeah.
And hopefully we get to see more. As he made that first step in being And what people don't know about Eze is that this guy has done it all. You know, he used to sell. He one of his companies that he founded way back then is still a major player today in phone repair. I've used them before. What's that name? I can't remember. But I can't remember the name. But it's like a very, very popular company now. Like people know as a phone repair company. This guy was pitching them. Was pitching them way back before he even blew like proper as an artist.
That's
You
great.
get. He used to go on like road shows to pitch this company. And how did he found it? Like he was just known as he's a mechanical engineer by training. You know all of that. So he's very technical. But he was just known as maybe the marketing founder. Then he carried like a proper like technical guy from I think it was from Alabama Market. You get. I told them teamed up together to start a phone repair company. You get proper and the blue from the market and now like Lekki Phase One, like everywhere. You get. So that's one company that the guy founded on a very low key and is still like operating proper. And like bro, you know phone repair, you know the margins there. You get. So they're probably cleaning out properly. You get. Then he cleaned up with that, moved on to music, did the thing in music, and now he's making waves already, you know, in VC. So I think he's someone that we should never, ever underestimate. Yeah, because he's a serial entrepreneur. And I think he saw that first where, or rather, him moving back into tech, you get, was a no-brainer for him. It was like, hey, I'm seeing what music can do. I know what tech can do. Let these two places start talking together. So I hope, and apparently, like you said, Zagadat has other companies in their portfolio, and Power has other companies in Zagadat and Power. They shall have companies in their portfolio or interest that I think he's involved in. I think Eating Life and the rest. So I would love to see more artists. I know Fowles is an investor in one edtech company as well. So I'd love to see more artists, you know,
Old school.
collaborate more, not yeah, old school. Not just invest, but collaborate more and um techify the music space, basically. Let's see what comes about. Ticketing space. What's the angle there? What's it called? Streaming. What's the angle there? Some people have done major moves in the streaming area. I think it's very brutal. Locally,
There's
MTN is doing some things
there's a
there.
ticketing platform in Nigeria, right? I've forgotten what it's called. I mean, the one.
And there's Tix of Africa, I think.
Mm.
Yeah. So there's so many things across the value chain, right, that we should play along with. And I think it's interesting seeing that happen.
Moving on to the last topic. Edo said there was a report that came out this week on, I know you'll be talking about this, but on the breakdown of startup funding in Nigeria, right? And I think they also highlighted like the top 10 startups that raised capital in
Yep.
Nigeria. And the numbers weren't looking appealing at all. They weren't looking appealing at all. So what's your take? Can you shed more light on this, please?
Yeah. So high level, I think Nigerian startups raised about 40, 41, 44, what you want to call it, $44 million in Q1 2023, you know, compared to 2022, 2021, where we used to raise like 250 M was like 2020, COVID year. We made like 200 M and the rest in the years before. So this is obviously a significant drop. You get significant, scary drop. Expected, yes, of course. I guess with the whole inflation, increase in interest rates globally, it was already expected that like funding was going to be as it may. You now look at that number and say, okay, what the Q1 funding like for Africa? For Africa was like 400 M, yeah, 400 and
Yeah,
some articles say 480, some say 500. You get.
yeah.
So you then say, wait, every time we rate,
Some of us said 600, so somewhere in this.
yeah. So you then say every time we read about fundraising in Africa, we will see Nigeria leading the pack. So if we're 44M in this equation, who led? You get, and then it becomes interesting that you know Egypt, our good friends, carried the bulk, you know, with $205 million in fundraise in just Q1. That is a shift. You know, it was Egypt then South Africa. Before it was always Egypt, South Africa, Nigeria, those three, Nigeria leading the pack. So that's a very big shift. You get as far as could this be a new swing of directions? Let's forget the funding, because I think it may be seasonal, maybe we may pick up again. But could we be seeing a new Africa where Egypt and South Africa are now leading the tech hub of Africa, not more Nigeria? You get, and where did we slip up? Because learning from mistakes is very important. We were leading before. Where did we slip up? You have to look at patterns. That's one. All right. So what was interesting to us, right? The second point is the number of deals that took place, right? Egypt had 11 deals, whereas Nigeria had 18 deals. Yet even within that, our small $44 million, right? That shows that we still have a situation where many startups are getting funded each year. Whereas Egypt has a situation where a handful of startups are always carrying the crowd. Maybe they have a handful of leaders or sectors that are going. Then, speaking on sectors, that leads to the third point. What we saw here was that for the first time, I don't think for the first time ever, but for the first time in a while, I think the top 10 startups that were funded in Nigeria this quarter, right, were mostly like, in other sectors beyond fintech, right? At least the leader was like an agri-tech startup, right? So you have a situation where we're seeing, yes, we have a decline in number of funds raised, right, or the amount of funds raised, but we're seeing consistent situation where many startups, numerous startups are being funded consistently. You get in Nigeria, but you also seeing a situation where we're also gradually diversifying our sector focus. We're going beyond fintech, as everyone has been trying to cry for, Nigeria. I think those two gray areas are interesting spots. You get what everyone looking at just the headline and saying, hey, we declined from 200M to 44M, or the economy, or this president or that president. All those I get it, right? But I like to focus on what's the bright spots. And I see those two data points as interesting. Any non-fintech founder looking at that will really smile. You get like, we didn't see, we used to pray for times like this. Understand? So that's why I'm happy. That's what took me out when I saw that headline. I didn't want to focus on the top line risk. What I'm still concerned about though is that is this going to be continuous as far as Egypt? We I keep talking about that. Egypt, South Africa, if I'm missing something there, we may have to invite someone that's an expert in those regions to come and talk to us, because we can't avoid this kind of trend and we can't avoid this kind of pattern. We have to look into it closer. But beyond that, yep, it's very interesting. I think let's look beyond the headline. Let's be positive. Everyone knows that next year, once things bounce back or once there's certainty in the markets, African startups or Nigerian startups particularly will easily bounce back. This is more of a blip in the trend line.
Yeah, and I mean those are very good points. I think even something that I'll add to that is we'll probably need to find some kind of expert in the North African market, right, to even come in and shed some more light on some of these data and trends that we're seeing now. But just a few things that I haven't take from that is one thing we have to look into is who are the main investors in this North African market, right? Kind of like I said earlier, the North African region tends to get a lot of capital from the Middle East and from the UAEs and the Dubai's and stuff, right? So a lot of capital tends to flow from there. So a lot of these investors from that region, because we all know they focus more on that North African market, and as opposed to like South and West African, East Africa kind of stuff. So is that why we're seeing these trends now? Another thing as well that would probably be good to look into is I won't be surprised if a lot of this, if a lot of the capital, or if a lot of the capital being raised by Egypt or North Africa was more so for growth and expansion, as opposed to Nigeria, which seems more like seed slash maybe like.
You're very correct, because all the deals, at least the top 10 deals in Nigeria, were seed and pre-seed.
Yeah, pre-seed, right?
So that brings some concern about what does exit look like for Nigerian startups?
Exactly.
What does follow-on rounds look like? Series A, Series B, you get. And you even see, like you said, AutoCheck acquiring other companies across Africa. Those companies are now experiencing acquisition. That's post Series A, post Series B. They're experiencing exits.
Exactly.
You get. We need to start making more of that, in Nigeria. But that's interesting. Yeah, that's actually an interesting point.
Yeah. I mean, and if I was just quickly run down the list, right, of the top 10 Nigerian startups, right, for Q1. So you have the one I talked about, Relief, which was number one, Relief, which raised 3.3 million. Curacell, which raised $3 million. Sunfuel, which raised $2.325 million. Shekel Mobility, $1.95 million. Clinify, which was 1.5 million. Fares Delivery, which was 1 million. Facam, which was 635,000. Person Africa, which was 600,000. Trade Lender, which was 520,000, and House Africa, which was 400,000. So those are the top 10 startups, right? And you can see the highest was 3.3 million, which is significantly lower than what we are normally used to. But at the same time, it just shows where the market is today. It shows investors' the lack of appetite for later rounds, right? And they're more focused now on the early stage stuff. Okay, how can we deploy our capital? How can we deploy our capital that will work more for us in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years, right? So it seems that's what the trend is right now. But at the same time, kind of like you said, you have to focus on the positives in the sense that a lot of these startups are not even fintech, right? I mean, now we're looking at other sectors, we're looking at agri-tech, we're looking at logistics, we're looking at different things, right? So those are the things that we can claw onto and say, okay, you know what, now investors are being a lot more intentional, and I'd be more proactive into like these different sectors that could potentially also grow into something nice. So yeah.
If I'm being fair, a quick roundup to that also is that we also had elections. Q1 in Nigeria was literally marked by elections. So maybe also that explains the difference between us and other African countries that are at top this list, Egypt and South Africa. We literally had presidential and governorship elections this year, Q1. So that political risk was significant. Probably people were probably on the sidelines waiting for that to clear out. Then we may see an uptick Q2, Q3,
That's fair.
Q4.
That's fair. That's fair. Ooh, that's fair. That's fair. That's a very good point, because I mean we all know how investments tend to slow down once, because when it comes to investors, right? One thing that they look at is policies, government policies, right? That's one investors, and for those of you who don't know, that's something they look at into a lot. Even us as investors, this is something we talk about very often, right? It's more like, oh, this guy comes to office. How do we think this guy can help boost this economy? What kind of policies can this guy do to favor this kind of economy, right? So that's something the investor would have been looking at. Now, I think what we can discuss in Q2 and Q3 is when we start seeing these numbers, based on where the numbers are looking like, then we can start pulling, like, drawing the dots and adding the connection. Say, you know what, do we think because this or that is why we're now seeing this amount of investment or that amount of investment? That would be something interesting to look into, right? Once we're in Q2 and Q3 and Q4. But yeah, that's another thing. But yeah, I think those are the three main topics that we had to cover today that we already covered. On the side note, I don't know if you saw this as well. This something just came out today. That Otedola sold his investment in
Transcorp.
In Transcorp. So just a couple of days after, less than 10 days after he acquired the shares. So I think I'm not really sure why. I really haven't dug into the story yet. But
it's more of what's it called? Well, we're seeing that we may, if we are reading it correctly, we've seen an era where what like what Carl Icahn did back in the days with like activist investor. You believe that this company could do better, XYZ, so you come in and take a position, right? Then the other person now does like a white knight move where Tunelumelu brought in his own holding company, HH, Herzl, HH Holdings or whatever, right? That came in and bought like 16% to basically take back the dominant position, and the total basically exited. Whereas within that week, or was it like 16 days, literally, at least this guy was able to ramp up the shares by all this activity going on. One, by him acquiring 5%, lots of people moved in as well to follow him because people believe that he has some, some savvy movements in the market. But then with Elumelu also buying up shares also to get more than 5% as well. So much activity happened basically. The share price of Transcorp shot off the roof. So either way, Otodola exited, happy, probably. Yeah, making so much return in just a week. Crazy. But it's also showing us adding this to like what Seth was begging startups to start listing on the stock market. It's showing that our stock market can start getting more interesting. But how transparent is it? Because these are big guys. So what were the deals that were going on behind the scenes? What were the phone calls that happened overnight? Why did Otodola back down? All these kind of things are what young guys are still worried about, as far as there's still some big boys club in the stock market, right? So if we're coming into that market now and look at all this has happened, SEC didn't say a word. You get, so is it going to be a rigged game? And startups, when startups now get listed now, they are playing a game that that the rules were not really transparent. It's a different set of rules. So that's the fear about. Otherwise, it would be very interesting for startups to start listing on the stock market. But like, what's the real game behind the game? We don't know yet. So everyone is still watching.
No, you're right. You're right. That fundamentally we have to enact some kind of policies, and there needs to be more. Well, I say liquidity, but there needs to be more liquidity even within the nation. I mean, for our stock market to be thriving, especially for like early stage stuff. The reason why it thrives in the US, or they tend to look toward the US, because there's liquidity here. I mean, people have
Yeah.
right, and now there are platforms like Robinhood and stuff, but all those platforms do well because the regular day individual like me and you can actually invest, right? That's why those platforms work, and that's why the stock market works here. Although, of course, it has its own gaps and issues here and there, but ultimately it works, right? For something like that to work in Nigeria, we have to enact some policies and actually make sure that we're actually following them or implementing those policies. For example, in the US now, as a majority shareholder in a company or as a CEO or anything of that sort, you have to disclose your, I mean, you have to disclose or even report, or you have to file to the SEC before you sell any significant shares in your company, right? So, like, for example, before Elon Musk sold all those Tesla shares to acquire Twitter and stuff, like he filed out with the SEC like weeks before that, like because he has to disclose those things. Now, those who were digging into the story were able to see that because it's all public information, it's not private, right? But they also wouldn't come out and just disclose that, oh, I'm selling, because it can affect the share price, right? But they have to disclose those things, right? They have to file with the SEC. Now, I don't know if those are things we're already doing in Nigeria, but like these kinds of things, right, that can be done to like hold people accountable and to closely monitor what's going on and to stabilize that whole economy is highly needed. I don't think we're there right now. Within the Nigerian stock market, right? So like these kinds of things that we need to take into consideration when trading. Because for example, like you said, now the whole thing with Transcorp happened, boom. The stock shot up and all of a sudden my guy exited. I'm not saying it's not possible in the US. It is possible, but what I'm saying is, if you dig deep down within that whole thing, are there certain things that shouldn't have happened that happened? I don't know. I haven't looked that deep into the story, but it's something good to look into. But ultimately, I just thought it was interesting, the fact that he just came in and exited. And these things happen. These things happen. But my guy is probably smiling. I focus more on Elumelu that got in after him, and I'm sure. I mean, it looks like Elumelu probably acquired at a higher price.
Way higher, yeah. 2
Higher.
naira versus 12 naira.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm just, and I wonder what it is today. But if the stock now tanks after this news of Otedala leaving, then Elumelu will be holding the bag, man. He'll be holding.
Yeah. But again, it shows you that so these guys, they're playing a different game, right? In the sense of almost like you know what Succession and all of that. They rather, and it's been a problem we complain about in Nigeria a lot, where the owners don't care about the profit or the stock price or whatever. They just care about ownership. They care about holding it and controlling interest. So when push came to shove, Limudi was ready to buy his own company at 12 naira or whatever. That is way more than, that's way more than, 5 times its price like a week ago. Yeah. So if we're the chairman of this company that now which the market is valued at 12 naira, why weren't you concerned when it was 2 naira? Why weren't you like pounding the CEO? Why weren't you shouting and all of that? You were so comfortable with 2 naira, and now the price is now 12 naira, you're now even buying and all of that. You get, so you have many sleeping companies where the owner just wants to be the owner. He doesn't really care about the share price at the detriment of shareholders.
Yep.
Right. And when he was now faced with the risk of losing controllership, he did all he could to quickly buy out the other person and gain ownership. That makes me scared as a shareholder that what does ownership look like? Does ownership look like you giving yourself private jets under the company expense and all of that? You get. So it's all of that. I mean, we don't know, we're not inside, but like you get, anybody that is thinking along those lines of like, wow, who's the company really for now? So shareholders are they just sitting ducks? You guess. So it's very interesting.
So especially when we're looking at the fact that your company is showing for 2 naira, bro, like just convert those numbers, man. It's ridiculous. Like 2 naira, man, and that's the share price. So we both know the many few reasons why companies would decide to go public for very few reasons, right? Whether it's exits or early investors want to exit, providing more liquidity if you're looking to raise capital to expand and grow your business. I don't necessarily think, now looking at those different reasons, I don't necessarily think the Nigerian stock market offers that at a very good level, right? So it's more like, why the Nigerian companies even go public? the Nigerian stock exchange
Yep.
markets, right? And that even goes back to your point as to these guys probably don't even care about the stock price because they're not using it for anything, right? At the end of the day, like these companies are pumping out cash and they're so profitable on a yearly basis, and that's what they care about: dividends, returns, profit sharing. That's really what they care about, not necessarily the stock price, right? So it's more like, so you go back to your point as to the fact that they probably care more about ownership, right? Control.
Yep.
But yeah, but let's not doubt much or speculate too much. You know, we don't do that here. We don't speculate too much. So we do that here.
We don't do that over here. We don't do that.
But yeah, this I mean this was fun. So that's all we have for this week. We hope you all found this helpful as usual. If you have any comments, of course, feel free to let us know. If you want to hop on this podcast as well with us, we try to do this every week, but at the same time, we're all very busy people. So we try. So maybe you might miss 1 or 2 weeks here and there, but ultimately we try to do this every week. So if you have anything that you like to, any topics that you like to share with us or even discuss with us, let us know. But yeah, we're always here for the people, man. But Edosa, thanks for carving out some time on your Friday to have this conversation. This has been fun as
Always
usual.
a pleasure, man. Always a pleasure, guys.
And yep, we'll see you guys next week. Have a good and lovely weekend.